People often ask me how I learned German and why I learned German. Well, I answered the question a long time ago on my blog about why people learn German in general and why they should learn German. But that doesn't really answer the question of why I personally chose to learn German, or in my particular instance, how German chose me. I graduated in 2005 from Stewartson Strasbourg High School with a graduating class of 27 people, which means that this is a tiny, tiny school. This school is actually so tiny and rural that it is actually surrounded by cornfields, bean fields, and one dairy farm. It is 3 miles from both Stewartson and Strasbourg, which means that it is 3 miles from anything that anyone could actually consider any type of civilization, and even if you get to one of those places, you still can't call it civilization. You still have to go another 15 to 20 miles before you find anything that's actually worthwhile. Each of these towns actually only had around 500 people. This means several things. No walking to school, no riding your bike to school, no open campus. It also means that it should be a huge shock that first of all we even had a foreign language, but second of all that the only real option was German. I could have taken Spanish, but it was part of this distance learning program, and basically what happens is I sit in a classroom and watch a TV screen, and at the time our TV screens were, those big box things that were, not very big. Anyway, so I would have had to have watched a teacher from a different school via this television screen, while one of our teachers sat in the room and made sure that we didn't, throw spit wads at each other or something like that. But basically I was just not really interested in the whole system of how it would have worked, and besides that, not a single person that I was aware of had actually done the program, even though it had been available for several years. Distance learning really isn't a bad option for learning a foreign language, it's just not a good option if you can't execute it properly. If you don't know how to do a flipped classroom, or you don't know how to kind of teach people without being in the same room as them, and you don't have a little bit of autonomy from the students, you really just can't do it, and so I couldn't possibly have taken Spanish at my high school. What I'm saying is, I didn't actually choose German. German chose me. It was the only option that I had to avoid taking an art class, and let's face it, most of the colleges weren't going to look at my art classes and be like, oh yeah, that seems like a legitimate foreign language course, so we're just going to forego that whole foreign language option. So I took German as a sophomore in high school for my first time, and why did I wait until I was a sophomore? Because in another wonderful idea, my high school would only allow you to take a foreign language as a sophomore through senior year. You could not take it your freshman year. This basically means that you could only have 3 years of a foreign language. You would have it your sophomore, junior, and senior years, and the only real option you had was German, so I had 3 years of German in high school. I don't really remember much about the courses themselves from the German classes. As far as how it was formed or the details of the class, the things that we did in class, I don't remember hardly any of it because that was 10 years ago. What I do remember is that our school had a GAP program. GAP stands for German-American Partnership Program, and this program was designed to have a one-to-one exchange between a high school in Germany and a high school in the United States, or a gymnasium in Germany. So our high school had one of these programs, which is another huge shock considering how tiny our school was. But at any rate, basically what happens is we have a school in Germany who sends us some students over 1 year, and the following year then the American students would go to that school in Germany. And we stay with host families, we have the host brother or sister then comes back and stays with you, and so you get to know the same family on both sides of the ocean. This allowed me one of the opportunities that would change my life forever. In 2004, I took my first trip to Germany through the GAP exchange. While I was there, I stayed with a host family in the city of Breitungen, which is in Thüringen. It's not terribly far from the capital city of Erfurt. While we were there, we attended the Wehretal Gymnasium Schwalungen. We attended German classes, we attended English classes, I actually went to several chemistry classes because that was interesting to me at the time. I also ended up going to a bunch of history classes and that kind of thing, and basically we just went to whatever classes we wanted to and kind of drop in and say hi and give us our opinion about American things versus German things and talk to the American students with the German students and get the teachers involved, and it was a good educational opportunity for everyone involved. In the afternoons or sometimes during the day, we would go on tours of things around the area. So sometimes we went to like little factories in town. So we actually toured a toilet paper factory, which was probably the most boring thing on the entire trip. But otherwise, we went to things like the Erfurt, which was the capital city of Thüringen, and we saw some of the politicians. We met some politicians and we talked to them about how their government works and that kind of thing. We went to a bunch of different touristy type things in the area, and it was just a kind of a cool way to get to know not just like, Berlin or something, one of the bigger cities, but see actual German life from the German perspective. All in all, it was a fantastic experience that changed my life. And we didn't just go to Thüringen, we also spent about 3 days in Berlin, and we saw some sights there and went and did the touristy type things there in Berlin. And we actually brought our host brothers and sisters with us on our trip to Berlin so that they could experience Berlin as well. After the first 2 weeks in the gymnasium and staying with the host families, we split off from the group and we went over to Wiesbaden over on the Rhine River, and we did some more touristy type things. We stayed in a youth hostel and we got the tourist kind of feel for Germany rather than just having the German side of things like we had before. The following year, my host brother came over to the United States and stayed with me and my family. We went to high school together, we went to St. Louis, we saw the Arch, we went to Springfield, we saw some of the politicians and saw how our government works, and that kind of thing. The Germans also started their trip a little bit different than ours. They actually stopped by in New York first, saw some of the sights there and did their touristy type thing, and then they came over to our high school for 2 weeks and did the stay-at-home kind of thing that we did over in Germany. I've known since about 8th grade that I wanted to be a teacher. I didn't always know what I wanted to teach, but I knew that I had had enough bad teachers and I've had enough good teachers to finally realize that this is what makes a good teacher, and these are the components that I can kind of pull from all of these different sources of information and make myself into a decent teacher, because honestly, it was a lot more of the bad teachers that made this influence than the teachers who were good, because I had so many just awful teachers that I couldn't stand knowing that there would be an entire other generation full of people who wouldn't be able to have at least one decent teacher. And so I wanted to be that one guy who was just like, that's my favorite teacher because this guy is awesome. I learned so much in this class, and I wanted to be that guy. So when I graduated high school, I went on to a university that specializes in teaching teachers how to teach. And so I went to Eastern Illinois University. It is a fantastic university, great for teaching, and one of the best programs in the area and even in the state for teaching teachers how to teach. For an entire year, I was a chemistry major, and during that time, I was, required to take at least 15 credit hours worth of classes, and certain ones could be electives, and certain ones had to meet certain requirements and all of that. But I was like, I'll just take a German class, it'll be fun. I had a good time in high school going to Germany, and maybe I'll actually continue learning German a little bit more. So I went into a German class. And if you take German in high school, you do get out of a few classes in college based on how well you did and how many classes you took. I took 3 classes in high school, as I mentioned before, and so that got me out of the first 2 years worth of classes at Eastern Illinois University. So I started out in the 2000 level class, and the teacher there was really nice and was talking to me for a little while, and she came up to me after about a week being in the class, and she's like, you don't really need this class, you don't really need to be here, you seem to know all of the information already, so what would you think about skipping a class? I do have to warn you though, there isn't actually the level up from where you are, there's only 2 levels up from where you are, so you would actually have to skip an entire year's worth of instruction rather than just skipping 1 semester. So how about you come by the class sometime next week and just kind of see what you think of the class and see if you think you could handle it. And then if you like it, we can switch you classes. So I went into this class, I kind of hung out for a little while. I even answered some questions during the class whenever I wasn't actually enrolled in it. And then I was like, I could probably do this. So I actually skipped an extra year, even though I didn't qualify for it according to how many classes I had taken. After my first year of being a chemistry major, I realized that I was getting C's in chemistry and A's in German, and so I just kind of took the easy road to life and did what I was good at, as opposed to doing something that I kind of liked, but wasn't very passionate about, and I wasn't passionate to the point where I could actually do well in it. I didn't put all that much effort into it, and I was just sitting around and listening to German music all the time, and so I thought, hey, this will be more fun anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and switch my major to German. This means that I had courses in grammar, I had courses in German history, German literature, I actually had a German film class, which was a fantastic idea. I watched a film one day, and then later on that week I had to write a paper based on that film. We would have class discussions about the films, and it just got us an introduction to German film in general, which was awesome. I also even did a few independent classes where I had to do my own research and kind of look up my own stuff. Unlike in high school, I actually paid attention while I was going to the university, and so I actually learned a lot more while I was at the university than I did whenever I was in high school. This is probably due to the fact that I was paying for it myself, and I had 2 jobs in order to accomplish this. So I was a grocer, I kind of stocked shelves for a produce department in a grocery store for a while, and then I also was a language tutor in the foreign language office, so I would tutor people in German while I was there as well. So I had 2 jobs while I was working in college, and that was my way of paying for my college while I was there, and so that kind of gave me a little extra incentive to care about what it is that I was doing there. But the other reason that I did this is because it's actually something that I enjoy doing. I like speaking German. I like the whole puzzle that you had to figure out in order to go where the verb needs to go and put things in different places and all of that. I would go home and watch German films, I would read German news, I would read German books, I would go out of my way to learn the German language outside of class, not just in the class, which was a great boon to my education. Also, every Friday we had a Stammtisch over at one of the local coffee shops where some of the professors from the German department, some of them from the philosophy department, we actually had a couple of other places that they would come from. Then we had some community members, and we would have German students and students who just happened to know German. We would even have some German natives there, and we would all just sit around in this coffee shop and talk about whatever it is that's going on in the world. So we would talk about politics a lot, we would talk about, films that were coming out, or the construction of the new art center that was going on at the time over at Eastern, and just basically whatever was going on in our lives, we would talk about that, but we would always talk about it in German. And if we made a mistake in grammar, it wasn't a huge deal, but one of the more affluent German speakers would say something about it, say, you need to say it this way, or you need to phrase it this way, and we would actually practice our German in a little bit more of a authentic kind of situation, speaking of just, this is the conversation you're going to have in a German coffee shop if you go to German coffee shops. So after 4 years of college, I was about to graduate, but I had still not made it back to Germany yet. A lot of people will tell you that you can't be fluent in a foreign language if you don't spend some time in that country that speaks that language. And while this is mostly true, it can be done that you can be completely fluent in a foreign language without going abroad. In fact, I passed all of my exams that I had to for the content exam, saying that I am fluent enough in German to teach it at a high school level, and so that was all done before I went back to Germany. But my senior year of college, my German professor came up to me and said, there's this opportunity that I think you should apply for. It's Deutsche Akademische Austauschdienst Scholarship. It's the DAAD scholarship program, and basically this would pay for you to go to Berlin for about a month long in the summer, and you would study at Humboldt University, and it would be a great opportunity for you, and everything would be paid for except for your food and your plane over there. I was like, absolutely sign me up. This sounds like a fantastic idea. She helped me with the application process, and we ended up applying for this, and I found out a little bit later that I actually had been awarded the scholarship, and so I was going to be going in June and July to Berlin, and my grandma actually paid for my flight, and I only had to pay for the food, and lucky for me I was working 2 jobs at the time still, and so I had a little bit of money to pay for my own food. They set me up in an apartment over there, and it was set to go. So in the summer of 2009, directly after graduation, like 3 weeks after graduation, I went to Berlin. I was already hired at a high school at that point, and I was already going to be teaching German, and so this was just an opportunity for me that wasn't necessarily going on my college transcript, but was going to be something that would be a fantastic idea for me. I took this course that was an intense grammar course, so every morning at about 9 o'clock we would have 3 hours worth of grammar classes, so from 9 to noon we would have grammar classes, and then at noon we would have a break for lunch, And we would then, in the afternoons, we would go and take some tours around the town and see some sights of Berlin, and we would always be speaking in German about whatever it is that's going on, and we would do some historical things, we would do some literature things, we would all tie this into the grammar things that we were doing. We talked about some music. But basically, we took the grammar class that we had in the morning and tied it into experiencing the German culture through the language on a daily basis in Berlin. Some of the things that we did while we were in Berlin, we went to an improvisation show. So we went to this bar and they had this group called the Gorillas there, and they said out to the crowd, wir brauchen einen Tiernamen. And so they would give us a name of an animal, and then they would go and say, okay, wir brauchen ein Lied, and we would give them the name of a song, and so they would sing that song based on that animal or something like that. And they just improv this whole whatever it is that's going on up there. We went to a couple of plays. We went to Mein Kampf, which is a parody of Hitler's life and kind of making fun of him. It was, kind of a comedy, but also kind of serious, because obviously you can't do a Hitler thing without a little bit of seriousness in there. But just kind of demonstrating the Germans' ability to kind of make fun of history while still remaining civilized about it. And then we also watched one that I don't remember the name of it, but it was probably the most awful play I've ever seen in my entire life. It was essentially like this abstract thing where there was no like props, there was no stuff on stage. They actually at one point faked that they had a handgun, like they were like pew pew, and it was awful. But anyway, so we went to a couple of plays. We went kayaking one day out on one of the lakes nearby in Berlin. But anyway, we just saw a bunch of really cool stuff. We did some walking tours of Berlin and that kind of thing. And then also we, of course, had some free time. So I would go out and just kind of do whatever I wanted to do in Berlin. And for a month long, I did exactly that. That trip, of course, is one of the main reasons that I love Berlin so much. It's obviously I had some great experiences in Berlin, and I just love the city, and I know more about Berlin than I do in the city that I actually live in right now. So that's it. When I returned from Berlin, I started teaching like a month and a half later, and I've been teaching Edwardsville High School since 2009 now, and that means that I just finished up my 6th year there. And I've been teaching German 1 and 2 this entire time. I don't think it's one of those things where people just like, oh yeah, I've learned a language and now I can just be like, I'm done. I don't have to continue learning a language. I teach this for a living, and I still am learning stuff. I still read German books. I still read German news. I still watch German films. I still watch German YouTubers. I still do all of those things that I did before to learn the language, and I still continue to do this because I don't think language learning is one of those things where you're like, oh yeah, I'm done and I can just kind of sit back and relax and rest on my laurels, but you always have a little bit more language to learn. There's always vocabulary to learn. I haven't mastered the English language vocabulary yet, and so for me to say that I've mastered German language would just be kind of naive. I don't think you can do it. I think that you get to a level where you're just like, yeah, that's probably about as high of a level as I'm going to get. But you should always be striving for that next level. Always be looking towards the stars to find out how much more can I learn, because education is not one of those things where you can just be done with it. Education is an ongoing thing that goes on until you die, and even then you are still learning something as you are dying. So that's it. That's my German language learning story, and if you like this kind of video, you might be excited to know that I found my journals from 2004 and 2009's trips to Germany, and I will be kind of digitizing those and reading those out in future videos to kind of give you an idea of what it is that I did there, and also give you a little bit more of an insight as to like my language learning mindset as I was learning German, because the journals that I was using, I was still a learner at that time. I was not a teacher at that time, and so you'll be able to see a little bit of the insights of what I was actually like in high school and kind of get a feel for what that was like as me experiencing German for the first time or experiencing Germany for the first time, and you get to see that kind of a first-hand look at what it is that I did as I was in your position. Eventually I'll start putting these videos into the Wednesday schedule. Instead of having tips on Wednesday, I'll start putting these in there, but I won't eliminate the tips because I really like those the tip videos that I've been doing about how you can learn German and how you can do it more efficiently. So I will be continuing that, and I will also be doing these journal entries as well. So let me know what you think about this video in the comments down below. Also tell me what it is that you did in order to learn German up until the point that you are so far. Give some people some tips on how you can help yourself to learn German. If you want to learn more information about the Daad Scholarship or the GAP program, you can find links to both of those programs in the description down below. I also put some links in there for some really random things like pictures of my high school from the German trip in 2004, which is on a website for the alumni from the Gymnasium in Thüringen. At any rate, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you want to leave a comment down below about how you're learning German and what your experiences are so far with the German language, go ahead and do that as well. Until next time, tschüss.